So Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle is a movie that I've been highly anticipating for a very long time. This is of course another adaptation of the novel The Jungle Book. It is not related to the Disney version at all. In fact, it was produced by Warner Brothers. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's another remake of the Jungle Book movie. I would say it's more of another adaptation of the original Jungle Book novel because it is very different from the Disney version. And guys, today I'm going to be reviewing Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle. Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle is the second feature film directed by Andy Serkis, who is of course the god of motion capture these days. He of course plays Caesar in the Planet of the Apes movie, or he played Gollum at least in the Lord of the Rings movies. Now, since that this movie was sold to Netflix by Warner Brothers, I was kind of thinking that it's not gonna be that good. I was still anticipating it and I was still excited for it, but I was kind of in my heart, I thought it was gonna be a bad movie. And I thought it was gonna be quite terrible actually. But I watched it today. I was waiting the whole day for it to come out, and I watched it, and it was actually surprisingly good. The things I've been hearing about it aren't that great. Like the Rotten Tomatoes was like at 60%, 57%, something like that. So yeah, that wasn't great. So my expectations were really low. And then when I watched the movie, I actually really liked it. It's a really good movie. I wouldn't say it's great, but it's really good. Starting off my review, I thought that Andy Serkis actually did a really good job directing this film. For his second feature film, I think he did a really good job, especially as this film is a really big film with a lot of CGI, and of course there's a lot of effort that has to be put into such a big blockbuster film. And I just think he did a really good job. Like, he has an eye for this stuff, clearly. And hopefully he actually does a bit more directing jobs, because he did an amazing job directing this film. I feel like from Andy Serkis' direction of the film, you can also feel this passion coming out of the screen when you're watching this film. And it just seems like there's a lot of hard work that's been put into the film, and really gives it a sense of like heart, which I really appreciated when I watched this film, because I felt like I was watching something that someone really put effort in to make it a good movie, and I think they did make it a pretty good movie. This version of the Jungle Book also has this very epic feeling. They try to really set up these really epic looking shots, and a few of these shots are really beautiful in this film. There's many shots in this movie that I can make my desktop background and it will look beautiful. But yeah, there's many shots that are beautiful. This movie has this epic feeling that you don't get from the Disney version. You really get this really dark, gritty, really badass feeling from the Mowgli character in this movie, and I really appreciated that in it being very different from the Disney movie. Now, as this film is a bit darker than the Disney version, you also get to see some things that you don't really get to see in the Disney version. There's a very intense fight between Baloo and Bagheera that I loved. And in total, there's a lot of intense scenes in this movie that you really are like holding your breath. Like literally, I was holding my breath in some of these scenes, and it was really just beautifully done. There was a lot of tension in some of these scenes, and I thought it was just very well executed. Another thing that really impressed me was the music of this film. So, you guys might be able to tell, but I'm actually an Indian, of Indian background at least, and you know, the music of this film is really just, it captures the feeling that you get when you're in these Indian environments with the flute and everything. I thought the music just did a really good job capturing its atmosphere and just making it feel like the setting is coming to life, feel like the jungle is coming to life, and just I thought the music was just very well done. This movie also chooses to show a little bit more of the human side of the story, with Mowgli spending a bit more time with the humans, which I thought was also very interesting, something that we haven't seen in the Disney movies, and it kind of just gives it a different approach, a different point of view to all of this story. And you know, you kind of see the struggle between Mowgli choosing to live in the jungle and the human land a bit more, and you kind of feel genuine like emotion behind that. Like, should he live in the jungle? Should he live with the men? And it just builds it up a bit more effectively than I think the movies do. By the movies, I mean the Disney movies. And as I was saying earlier, this movie actually does have a lot of heart. There are some really emotional scenes, either positively or negatively. That's up for you to see, but there are some surprisingly emotional scenes throughout this movie that really surprised me. So guys, let's talk about the negatives now. My first negative is that Mowgli, when contrasted to his background, doesn't really look like he fits in the most of the movie. You can really see that it's a green screen behind him, and I think if they had like a month extra, they could have really fixed this out. But you know, it's noticeable in the movie that you can clearly see that there's a green screen background, which of course there is, but it's just really noticeable when you are comparing it to the Disney version, at least, where it all seems very seamless. I also felt that Act 1 of this movie was a bit rushed. It was just like plot point, and not enough exploration of those plot points. And I felt like if they explored those plot points, the movie would have just been a bit better set up. I also feel like this movie was a bit too fast-paced, like, the whole way through. Of course, Act 1 was really fast-paced and a bit too rushed. But, you know, overall, I think the movie was a bit too fast-paced. And I think if they added 20 more minutes to just flesh things out a bit, that would have really helped set up some of the emotional scenes a bit better. Even though they did work, they just would have been working even better if they had the extra 20 minutes to do that. Now, my next complaint is really just a nitpick. It's really just a bad criticism, but I have to say this. Baloo, the CGI Baloo just looks really bad in this movie. He looks really ugly and unrealistic compared to the other animals that look really great, actually. I was worried about this in the trailer. He looks kind of like a bad costume, like someone is in a bad practical costume, which, you know, what's the point of using CGI if you just want to look like you're in a bad costume? But that problem was only on the Baloo characters. Most of the other characters actually looked surprisingly good. Like in the trailers, I was a bit worried that the animals didn't really look like animals. And for sure, for the first 5 minutes, I felt like that. But then, you know, I got used to it, and the animals actually look quite good in this movie. Not as good as the 2016 version of The Jungle Book, but they still look really good. Now, another complaint I had about this movie was some of the kids' acting just was a bit too over the top. He did a really good job with the physical stuff, you know. He had some really good physical movement. He like pretended to be like an animal really well. But my problem comes in when he kind of overreacts a bit a few times during the movie. Sometimes during the emotional scenes, he kind of really overreacts and kind of ruins the moment, but, you know, still, you know, he's a kid, so I kind of understand it, but it is something that I have to note down. Another issue that I had was the villain, Shere Khan's motivations weren't as clear on why he was doing things when you're comparing it to the Jungle Book movies by Disney. You know, he seemed like a bit of a bland villain, but in reality, he's actually a really interesting villain. In the book, in the anime series that I watched as a little kid, you know, he's a really interesting villain, and I just wish that they delved a bit into him as well, instead of just making him a big bad guy, mustache twirling bad guy. Even though he doesn't have mustache, I guess whiskers twirling bad guy, I guess. Now, my last complaint about this movie is literally another nitpick, is that they had some really odd edits, like some really crazy odd edits. It's hard for me to describe it because, you know, I can't really describe it to someone who hasn't watched the film without, you know, spoiling some scenes. But in this movie, there are definitely a lot of weird edits, and I think they could have done without it. You know, I think the odd edits were like really easy to fix. If they had like a day even, they could have fixed all these edits. I bet you someone online can easily fix these edits. Even I might be able to fix these edits, I don't know. But yeah, guys, in conclusion, I really enjoyed this film. It definitely exceeded my expectations. This movie is not going to be for everybody, but for me, I really liked it. Don't watch it with your children or little children because it's a pretty dark movie, but you know, it really exceeded my expectations when I was expecting it to be quite terrible. So guys, I'm going to give Mowgli, The Legend of the Jungle a 3 out of 5 stars. Yes, that is a 3 out of 5 stars. Now, this is probably the highest 3 out of 5 stars I've given this year because the amount I like this movie. It's probably in the top of the 3 out of 5 star lists of this year. But yeah, I really like this movie. I just don't think it's a 4 out of 5 stars, so I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 stars. But definitely, it's worth a watch. I really enjoyed it. Guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video as I enjoyed this movie. And as I enjoyed making this video, I really just love making these videos, as you guys might notice. I say this in the end of every one of my videos. But yeah, guys, thank you for watching. I really appreciate you guys watching. And bye-bye.